For the past couple of months, the US has been trying to rush through bespoke deals with all of its major trading partners. This whole deal-making fiasco really kicked off after Trump's so-called Liberation Day on April 2nd, when Trump threatened massive tariffs on basically everyone. After panic in the financial markets, Trump announced on April 9th that the vast majority of the Liberation Day tariffs would be delayed for 90 days, sparking a rush to negotiate what the Trump team claimed would be 90 deals in 90 days. When this didn't happen, Trump extended the deadline to August 1st, and given that most of the countries on the Liberation Day list are still waiting on a deal, this deadline will probably be extended again. Nonetheless, we've now got enough deals on the table to get a sense of what Trump wants out of them. So in this video, we thought we'd take a look through all of the deals so far, and whether Trump is really winning the trade wars. In the latest issue of our magazine, Too Long, we dive deep into the current state of America, discussing our real thoughts on the state of American democracy, soft power, universities, and the countries that could steal their crown, from China to the EU. Find out more about Too Long, the end of the American order, by clicking the link in the description. So let's get straight into it. At first glance, it looks like Trump's done some pretty great deal making. His plan is to basically threaten massive tariffs and then demand concessions from the other country in order to bring that tariff rate back down. And, well, this seems to have worked. Trump usually extracts some pretty eye-catching concessions, and while the final tariff rate comes in lower than he might have threatened, it's usually still pretty high by recent standards. With the EU, for instance, Trump threatened a 50% tariff rate, forced the EU Commission to make a whole load of concessions, including buying $750 billion worth of American energy products over the next 3 years, and investing $600 billion into the US, before settling for a 15% tariff anyway. 15% is obviously lower than 50%, but it's still far higher than the roughly 4% average tariff that the EU was facing before Trump. This is why the deal has caused so much upset in Europe. Many European leaders apparently feel that the deal was essentially a lose-lose, because the EU still ended up with a higher tariff rate than they had beforehand, but they also had to make a whole load of expensive concessions. The deal with Japan, which Trump announced a week earlier, followed a similar pattern. Trump threatened a 35% tariff, forced Japan into making a whole load of concessions, including expansions of rice imports from the US and a commitment to invest $550 billion in the US, before setting it at a 15% tariff anyway. Again, from a certain perspective, this looks like a lose-lose for Japan, which might be why Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba waited until a day after the upper house elections in order to announce it. The deal with the Philippines went much the same way. Trump threatened a 20% tariff, the Philippines agreed to reduce tariffs on US imports and deepen military cooperation, and then Trump brought down the final tariff to 19%. With Indonesia, Trump threatened a 32% tariff. Indonesia agreed to reduce tariffs on US imports, buy $15 billion worth of American energy products, and 50 Boeing jets. And Trump then brought the tariff rate down to 19%. In Vietnam, Trump threatened a 46% tariff. Vietnam agreed to reduce tariffs on US imports and take steps to limit transshipments, i.e. Chinese exports being rerouted via Vietnam, and Trump brought the tariff rate down to 20%. With the UK, Trump threatened a 25% tariff on UK car exports. The UK agreed to buy $10 billion worth of Boeing planes and accept new reciprocal trading rules for beef and ethanol, and Trump brought it down to a baseline 10%, albeit with a quota system. You get the idea then. From Trump's perspective, it looks like things are going pretty great. He's getting both massive tariffs and some pretty eye-catching concessions. Furthermore, so far tariffs don't seem to have hurt the US economy as much as economists expected them to. Inflation hasn't skyrocketed, and the US is still on track to outgrow its G7 peers. Exporters have also struggled to find alternatives to the US market, and so have continued to sell their products in the US despite tariffs. This allowed the US Treasury to rake in some serious revenues. The Treasury has collected an extra $20 billion in June, helping it to post an unexpected monthly surplus. Nonetheless, while it's true that Trump's tariff-centric deal-making is going better than expected, there are at least 3 caveats worth mentioning. The first is that while they might be eye-catching, it's not clear that many of these so-called concessions will actually happen. The European Commission, for instance, has already said that its pledges were merely intentions, noting that the Commission doesn't have the legal authority to direct private companies to buy from or invest in the US. Similarly, Japan has already pushed back against Trump's interpretation of the $550 billion pledge. Trump originally claimed that Japan was basically giving him $550 billion to invest in the US as he wanted. But Japan has since come out to say that A, the $550 billion figure is a maximum ceiling, not a requirement, and B, that only 2% will come from actual investment, with the remaining 98% coming in the form of loans or loan guarantees. Similarly, while Vietnam and Indonesia both apparently agree to reduce transshipments, presumably to stop Chinese imports sneaking in, aggregate data doesn't suggest that this has worked, and both China's trade surplus and America's trade deficit are still growing. This speaks to another tension in Trump's deal-making. He apparently wants to reduce America's trade deficit, but forcing other countries to invest hundreds of billions into the US is a surefire way to increase it. After all, investing in the US means a stronger dollar, which means more imports and less exports. The second caveat worth mentioning is that while the US economy has fared pretty well so far, this is in large part because Trump has been flip-flopping. So many of the tariffs that he's announced haven't actually come into force yet. Not only has this meant that America's actual tariff rate is currently lower than the Trump rhetoric implies, it's also given businesses an incentive to accept lower profits rather than increase prices, because they don't want to irritate customers when they expect that Trump is just going to reverse his tariffs later anyway. However, if it becomes overwhelmingly clear that the tariffs are here to stay and America's average tariff rate continues to rise, then inflation could suddenly kick in. Similarly, while the US growth rate is indeed higher than that of its peers, it's still lower than it was before Trump. The third and final caveat is China. In short, while Trump has been able to bully most of America's trading partners into concessions, it looks like he essentially lost his mini trade war with China, when China retaliated against the Liberation Day tariffs, sparking a tit-for-tat trade war that ended with both parties imposing tariffs of above 100% on each other. China also imposed restrictions on strategically significant exports like rare earth minerals, forcing Trump into a trade truce that ended with China facing a 30% tariff, but making no further concessions. While bullying America's erstwhile allies might be fun, without a deal with China, Trump is unlikely to resolve America's persistent trade deficit, given that it's essentially a reflection of China's persistent trade surpluses. And if you want to know more about this topic, then there's plenty of other outlets reporting on it too. Unfortunately though, every news source has its bias, and no matter how hard each of us try, we'll inevitably miss a story, or worse, only hear half of the story in the first place. And that's where our sponsor Ground News comes in. Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles to help you better understand the world around you, pulling back the curtain on media bias. For example, this story about Trump's recent deal with the EU has been covered by more than 864 sources. We know that more than 130 of these have been reported by the left, and more than 112 have come from the right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. But my favourite part of the app and website is the aptly named blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on one side of the aisle or the other. For instance, if you lean right, you might miss this story about how Trump's tariffs have set him on a collision course with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. When it comes to blind spots, it's not just about discovering different stories though. It's also about discovering just how political bias frames the stories themselves. Having a tool that helps you to spot this and helps you take action is a real game changer. It's no secret that here at TLDR News, we're constantly thankful for Ground News. It's such an incredibly useful platform that captures information that you just can't get anywhere else, and keeps you informed in a media landscape that's constantly trying to attract your attention and sway you towards or away from certain political viewpoints. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan by using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code on screen. This offer is only available here, so make sure that you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.